This British Airways staff member insisted to me that it was very obvious to her that there was zero connection between. Meghan refused to touch or look after Archie even once. She had zero interest when he was upset, and she expected the staff the entire time.
Imagine being just a few feet away when the biggest secret of the decade slips out in a hushed conversation. That's exactly what happened high above the Atlantic. When veteran flight crew members claim they overheard Meghan Markle and Prince Harry quietly trading words that no one ever expected to hear, words that could unravel everything the world thought it knew about their children. It wasn't a random rumor whispered by an anonymous internet troll. This came from trained professionals who'd served royals before, people who knew exactly how to stay discreet. But on that flight, tucked behind the first-class curtain, Meghan and Harry were caught speaking in low, urgent voices about their kids. And what the crew says they heard sent a chill through the cabin. 'Cause for years, the Sussexes have painted a picture of perfect family life. Cozy photos, polished interviews, carefully staged moments to prove they were just like any other parents. But according to these insiders, that night, thousands of feet in the air, the truth finally slipped out. And it was nothing like the fairy tale the world had been sold. Meghan's image has always been built on precision. Every appearance looked effortless. Every statement sounded polished. But the flight crew who served her and Harry on that royal tour say behind all the carefully scripted photo ops was a cold, calculated performance. One flight attendant, a veteran of over 2 decades, described a moment that still haunts her. As the plane leveled off and the lights dimmed, she passed by Meghan's seat and glimpsed the Duchess leaning toward Harry, her voice low but urgent. Most passengers were sleeping, lulled by the white noise and soft cabin lighting. But not Meghan, not Harry. Their heads were close together, hands gesturing in a way that looked tense. She couldn't make out every word, but she caught enough to realize this wasn't idle chatter about schedules or press events. It was about the children, specifically how certain details had to be kept straight. The flight attendant said Meghan's exact words were something like, "Make sure they never see the paperwork. No matter what, we don't talk about it again." First, she assumed it was about security forms or travel documents, but as she moved closer, Harry's response made her freeze in place. He muttered, almost under his breath, "If it comes out, it's all over." For the attendant, those words hit like an ice bath. She'd watched the couple boarding with Archie in tow, the cameras capturing sweet glances and delicate touches. But in that moment, none of it seemed real. It felt like watching actors drop character when the director yelled, "Cut!" This was the first crack in a story that millions had believed without question, and it wouldn't be the last. On the surface, Meghan Markle looked like the picture of maternal warmth. She was the glamorous Duchess with a baby on her hip and a heart full of good intentions. But the same flight crew said there was something unsettling in the way she behaved during the flight. She never once checked on Archie. She never reached over to brush his hair or soothe him when he whimpered. Every small moment of comfort came from the nanny seated nearby. Meghan was focused on her seat arrangement, her outfit, her next move. One attendant described it as a performance so well rehearsed it slipped seamlessly into any setting. Meghan would occasionally flash a polite smile to the crew, but her gaze would drift right past the baby. No recognition, no connection, just a woman determined to keep up appearances at any cost. The British Airways staff member, who later spoke under strict anonymity, said it was the strangest flight she'd ever worked. Not because of security protocols or media attention, she'd handled plenty of royal charters, but because of the cold distance between mother and child. And when the plane touched down, that eerie sense of detachment only deepened. The Sussexes emerged onto the tarmac, all smiles, waving at photographers. The nanny discreetly handed Archie to Meghan, who cradled him just long enough for the cameras to get their shot. The moment the flashes stopped, she passed him back without a word. At the time, no one on the outside knew any of this. But behind the scenes, flight staff were already talking. They'd served dozens of high-profile families over the years, but they'd never seen anything quite like this. And that was just the beginning, because soon another voice would join the chorus. Someone with far more explosive information to share. Her name was hidden behind the initials DL, but her story was about to shake the monarchy to its foundations. DL wasn't some random gossip blogger or opportunistic tabloid source. She was, according to her own account, the woman who carried Meghan and Harry's children. Twice. Her claim was so bold, so unprecedented, that even seasoned royal watchers struggled to process it. She said she had been approached in strict secrecy, offered what she described as life-changing money, and told she would never be acknowledged publicly. According to DL, she spent the better part of 2 years in seclusion, living in a private compound where every move was monitored by a rotating team of handlers. No phone, no visitors, no contact with the outside world. When she finally emerged, she said she had been promised confidentiality for the rest of her life. But after watching years of polished PR, glowing interviews, and lucrative deals built on the idea of Meghan as a hands-on mother, she decided to break her silence. DL's words were measured but devastating. "I don't want money. I don't want fame. I want the truth out. And if they doubt me, let them test me. Let them do the DNA." She didn't just come forward empty-handed. She brought a suitcase of evidence. Ultrasound images, hospital bracelets, video diaries she'd recorded in secret, documenting every stage of her pregnancies. One clip showed her in a delivery room, exhausted and tearful, whispering the birth date and location into the camera. First, many dismissed her as a publicity seeker. But as more of her documents were authenticated by independent journalists, the narrative began to shift. Because while Meghan was busy posting curated family videos and poetic reflections on motherhood, DL was laying out a timeline that directly contradicted everything the Sussexes had ever claimed. And that's when the public started to remember an odd moment back in 2019. During a television appearance, Meghan moved to sit down, and her stomach appeared to fold in on itself in a way that no pregnant belly ever should. At the time, palace spokespeople insisted it was a trick of the fabric, an awkward camera angle. Critics were dismissed as conspiracy theorists, but in the wake of DL's revelations, that clip resurfaced, and suddenly it looked less like a fluke and more like evidence. It wasn't just the footage that raised eyebrows. There were no confirmed hospital records of Meghan's deliveries, no paparazzi photos of her arriving or departing, no security detail stationed outside for days, as there had been with other royal births. She simply appeared, days later, polished and perfect, holding a newborn in her arms. One unexplained moment could be chalked up to circumstance, but the pattern was undeniable. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood shifted from dismissal to quiet alarm. Because if DL's claims were true, it wouldn't just be a scandal, it would be a constitutional crisis. Archie and Lilibet were granted royal titles. They were officially recognized as members of the line of succession. But if they were born via surrogacy and no legal filings were submitted, their royal status wouldn't just be controversial, it could be nullified altogether. Sources close to King Charles say the legal team began quietly reviewing the centuries-old succession laws, searching for precedents, hoping to find any justification to contain the fallout. And all the while, Meghan's PR machine went into overdrive. Within hours of DL's story breaking, the Sussexes' social channels were flooded with glossy, intimate family moments. Archie giggling in the grass, Lilibet chasing butterflies in a sun-drenched garden, blog posts filled with carefully worded tributes to the challenges of motherhood. To some fans, it was the proof they needed, evidence of a real, loving family. To others, it looked too perfect, too timed, too staged. One viral Reddit comment put it bluntly, "If you're a real mom, why act so hard to prove it?" While Meghan fought to protect her brand, Harry fell eerily silent. No statements, no denials, not even a vague, lawyer-written rebuttal. Insiders described a man transformed, withdrawn, angry, and unpredictable. He stopped returning calls. He snapped at longtime friends. He reportedly spent hours alone, staring at the garden behind their Montecito mansion. Some believed he was finally confronting the truth he'd spent years denying. Others were convinced he'd always known, and had chosen loyalty over transparency. Either way, his silence was deafening. Meanwhile, DL wasn't done. Her final move would be the most daring yet. A live, third-party supervised DNA test to prove beyond question that she was the biological mother of Archie and Lilibet. No staged press conferences, no lucrative media deals. Just a simple, irrefutable answer to the question the monarchy couldn't afford to ask. The results confirmed her claim the impact would be seismic. Not just for Meghan and Harry, but for the entire royal institution. Royal historians say it would force Buckingham Palace to retract titles, amend official records, and potentially strip the children of their place in the line of succession. Fashion brands that once clamored to dress Meghan have already distanced themselves. A memoir about her motherhood journey was quietly shelved. Publishing insiders admitted off the record that no one wanted to touch the project until this was resolved. Cause if Meghan built her image on a story that wasn't true, every deal, every endorsement, every sympathetic interview would be stained by the same doubt. This isn't just a tabloid scandal, it's a reckoning. And in the end, there's only one question left. The truth comes out, will Meghan lose more than the spotlight? She could lose everything. But even as the monarchy braced itself for the fallout, there was something almost surreal about watching Meghan's public persona cling to the illusion. In the days following DL's announcement, you could almost feel the tension radiating from every official Sussex communication. Each post was carefully worded. Each photo was perfectly lit. The message was always the same. We are unbothered. We are united. We are normal. Yet behind the scenes, cracks were spreading. A former palace advisor, speaking on condition of anonymity, described late-night phone calls with King Charles's legal counsel. According to this insider, the monarchy was considering options no one had dared to utter out loud. Revoking royal titles, issuing a public statement acknowledging the uncertainty, even cooperating with any independent inquiry that might be launched. For the Queen Consort, it was a nightmare scenario. She had spent years trying to project stability, to reassure the public that the House of Windsor could weather any storm. But this wasn't just a scandal about bad behavior or an ill-judged interview. This was something far more serious. A direct challenge to the legitimacy of royal lineage itself. And as that realization sank in, so did the urgency. Multiple sources say attorneys quietly began mapping out contingency plans. What if DL's DNA test matched? What if the paperwork she claimed to have kept in a locked box proved authentic? What if the children were, in the eyes of the law, never eligible to inherit titles or privileges? Some advisors argued the monarchy had no choice but to draw a line. Others feared the backlash of stripping children of royal status, no matter how the public felt about their parents. While the royals debated, the media frenzy only intensified. Cable news shows aired primetime specials dissecting every known detail. Was the mysterious folding belly video an elaborate hoax? Were there secret surrogacy contracts hidden behind NDAs? And perhaps most chilling of all, what else had Meghan and Harry concealed from the public? Commentators noted that for years, the Sussexes had demanded privacy, only to produce endless documentaries, podcasts, and memoirs. Now, when it mattered most, they had nothing to say. For Harry, insiders painted a portrait of a man trapped in a spiraling dilemma. If he stood by Meghan and her story collapsed, he risked destroying his last shred of credibility. If he stepped back or called for transparency, he could be accused of betrayal. One longtime friend described it simply: he's paralyzed. He doesn't know who to trust, and he doesn't know what's true anymore. As the days stretched into weeks, public sympathy eroded. Online, hashtags that once trended in support of the couple transformed into relentless skepticism. Reddit communities dedicated to royal analysis gained tens of thousands of new members. People traded theories, parsed old photos, and speculated about which insiders would come forward next. But the most unsettling part of DL's story wasn't her receipts or her willingness to testify. It was her calm insistence that she had been treated like a disposable asset. She described being moved between safe houses, kept under round-the-clock surveillance, and given scripts for what to say if anyone asked why she'd disappeared. According to DL, she was told she was doing something historic. That someday, when the world was ready, she'd be recognized for her sacrifice. But when the pregnancies ended, there was no recognition, only a terse message that her services were no longer required. Her voice in interviews was steady but edged with quiet rage. They erased me. They pretended I didn't exist. But the children exist, and I brought them into this world. For many watching from afar, that was the detail that made the entire story feel heartbreakingly real. 'Cause no amount of PR spin could erase a woman's memories of childbirth. Even those who doubted parts of her claim admitted the timeline was suspicious. The lack of hospital documentation, the absence of credible witnesses to Meghan's deliveries, the staged nature of so many post-birth photos, piece by piece, the puzzle started to form a picture that no amount of curated social media could undo. Meanwhile, Meghan's commercial empire began to feel the strain.